The only thing better than bidding on key comic book auctions is winning them. Hey there, today I have an unboxing video, and in this video I'm going to open up a stack of auctions that I won through Infinity Comics on the platform HipComic. And I have really dialed in and focused on specifically Infinity Comics auctions, and there's a few reasons why. I have really found that I don't quite understand this, first of all, the sheer amount of quantity. Infinity Comics will probably set up 4 to 5 auctions per week, and I think that their typical auction is roughly 300 items. It's a lot of time to go through all of those comics to really figure out which are the books to bid on. But I have a system. If you've watched my prep videos, I go through that. I really hone in on either books that have value that are, obviously they have a low bid. So I'm trying to get in while the bidding is low, and then I'll put a max bid in on the comic and then kind of set it and forget it. And the other thing is I'm able to filter out which books are keys. So when you're looking at auctions, you will see a lot of people, they'll try and define their own key. Maybe they'll misrepresent a book and say it's a first appearance. They'll post a facsimile and say it's the original, or lead you to believe that it's something more than it is in some way or another. Infinity Comics is pretty straightforward, and I think what I'm doing is it's not that I'm taking advantage of the platform, it's just understanding the platform. So on HipComic, what happens is you're able, as a seller, to take a photograph of the comic book, and then it will automatically create the listing for you based on that photo, meaning it will create the title in a certain way, it'll show you the year, it will add other metadata associated to the listing based on just that photo alone. So what it does is it makes it easier for sellers to rapidly post a number of books, which includes the photograph of the auction item. But what ends up happening is the sellers, I think, are so dialed into posting a lot of books and getting, when you're talking about 300 auctions, and again, just to keep the numbers conservative, if you're auctioning 1,000 comic books off a week, you're probably not going into every single comic book and really talking about first appearances and whether or not the book is key or not. So what I do is I distill the Infinity Comics auction list down to also the key books. And I have really shifted my collecting habits to either key books or really obvious mainstream titles and issues within the titles, or issues within a particular memorable, popular run in terms of back issues, which is the bulk of what Infinity Comics will list. They will list some modern books. Sometimes I go after the modern books, but really what I'm targeting are those really key back issues. Now, another thing that I've noticed too is condition-wise. Again, I am not saying that Infinity Comics or any seller of comic books is lazy. However, if you think about, again, selling 1,000 comic books a week, are you really grading every single book to the extent or degree that maybe CGC or CBCS would? I would say that most collectors are not grading their books in that regard. I actually enjoy the process of grading. I like to pretend that maybe I'm working for a grading company and I have special lighting and other tools where I can really take my time with a book. Other times I'm glossing over a book because maybe I'm trying to catalog books or just kind of get a rough estimate of what the condition is, or figure out whether or not I actually want to press the book or clean it and so forth, right? I have different reasons for spending various levels of time with different comics. And I think that that's true of any collector. Point is, I think that a lot of books that get listed online, they're listed online for sale at auction because the seller clearly wants to sell the item. We are not talking about super high-end comics. We're not talking about Golden Age DC and Marvel, or pre-code horror and all these other things that people really go after, where the difference between a a 4.5 and a 5.0 could be 3 or 4x the value and all this other crazy madness. I like to target a specific sort of window or range of comics where I feel like I can get away with a fine plus or a VF near mint, where if I'm wrong or if I'm right, it's not breaking the bank or I'm not retiring. With Infinity Comics, I've noticed that the bulk of what they are putting up for sale is in that sort of fine minus to, I'd say, VF plus range. And when I'm looking at back issues on there, I'm able to almost sight unseen go in and place my max bids, because even if I miss something, yes, it would be disappointed, but I too have to bid in bulk, so to speak. Now, the last bit that I want to point out is that with the market being what it is, and the fact that HipComic is not the most popular platform out there, I'm able to combine decreased prices and values in comics with a platform that's maybe not getting as much attention as either it should or people want to give it. It's kind of up to all of us as collectors as far as where we want to find and get our books. And I've made the decision to splurge, to really focus on comics that I either really consider to be out of my price range, or I'm allowing myself to get in a lesser grade, because now those lesser grades, the price is falling, and the availability that Infinity Comics offers, where they're posting keys that are kind of buried in their listings because they're not broadcasting, hey, I've got this book, it's a first appearance. It's just a book like anybody else in their stack of listings, where it's like, how do you eyeball the keys unless you're like, that I know that book. And believe me, I am bidding on those books where they're covers and they're issues that you recognize, and we're not fooling anybody. But a lot of times those keys are buried. Anyway, I am now focused on trying to get books that I've always wanted. I'm willing to pay a little bit more than I typically would for a comic book, because I want those keys, borderline grails, if you will. I did this recently with ASM 316, the first full Venom cover. I've always wanted that book. I took it in a little bit of a lesser grade than I would typically focus on, and I'm very happy with it. And also, I think it has the potential for a bit of an improvement. So all of those things combined is really driving my purchasing habits at this point when it comes to back issues, where I'm probably doing 90% of my back issue digging, if you will, online through specifically Infinity Comics on HipComic. All right, so I've given you the full background, the full mindset. I want to get to the comics. That's the best part. So I want to open up this shipment that I received from Infinity Comics. Had a little bit of a roundabout with UPS and signatures and things like that, I'm just happy to have the shipment in my possession here. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to show you the types of books that I'm now focused on, where, again, it's a great combination of availability and the prices of these books falling into my budget. So I'm very, very excited to open up this order from Infinity Comics. So here we go. All right, here's the box that I received from Infinity Comics. It was sent via UPS, as I mentioned. They kicked in signature confirmation because the total amount of the order was above a certain number. I don't know what that number is, but I wasn't available to sign for the package when it arrived, and it ended up being rerouted to a UPS store that took an additional couple of days. So just keep that in mind. If you are hot and heavy into bidding and the total amount of your auction goes up, just be prepared that the shipment won't be left at your residence. You probably need to sign for it. Let's get to the opening of this. I'm curious to see how these books were packed, especially some of the bigger books. So let's get this thing opened up. All right, it's not fully opened up here, but I wanted to point something out. This is pretty ridiculous. There's so much room for these comics to slide around. You can see here, I don't really quite know what this is, but it's two giant pieces of cardboard, and the comics are just shifting around under the cardboard. Like, this thing is not even, I don't know what this is. So a little disconcerting here because we've got tape that's not even doing its job, and it's overly taped. Weird. But basically, these were all sliding around. Now, I'm hoping that you just kind of hope and pray that the bags and boards do their job so that you're not relying on anything, but it wasn't even taped down. So it was just shifting back and forth. We'll see. We'll find out and see what condition these books are in, and see if there were any damage caused by this. So that's something I would probably make a note of and contact them and say, come on, guys, let's pay this much money for these comics. Let's make that initial wrapping of the comics better. All they would have needed to do is take the bubble wrap that they use. Instead of bubble wrapping the outer side with the cardboard, wrap these guys in the bubble wrap and then put the cardboard on it. But even the two pieces of cardboard, they were just too big. Anyway, I do appreciate the fact that they used the packing peanuts. That hopefully helped, but regardless, it was just these guys were just free ranging in the box. So let me finish unpacking these. Okay, essentially what they did is they took the entire stack of comics, split it into three, and put each of those three stacks into a plastic bag, which hopefully that helped with the, if it really was sliding around during transit, maybe helped them stay together a little bit better. I'm just nervous because I know some of the books that are in here, and I'm just hoping that they weren't further damaged in transit. All right, let me find out here. Let's look at the books. We've got the first one here, and this is X-Men number 91. Grade 25-cent cover here. This is that era of X-Men where these were essentially reprints. Hopefully a little bit of foreshadowing here as we moved into the X-Men issues numbered 90, where we're about to make a change for the X-Men with a whole new direction. And this is one of the last X-Men issues that was a reprint. More X-Men goodness, and there's quite a few in here. This is X-Men 163. This is one example of some of the condition types that I've noticed where a lot of these books are rolled. Hopefully you can see here right there on the bottom of the book. So this thing is completely creased and rolled, and what they end up doing is just saying, okay, this is pretty creased, and then we'll just drop it down to like an F plus or something like that, and the book usually slips through for a couple of bucks. Now I target these because I feel like even just a basic quick press would help flatten that out. The tough part is this one specific example, of course, the first one that I'm showing, has a staple on top, which would make it a little bit tricky to press out, just because now you've got the staple going through the book top to bottom instead of off to the side, and that happens. So this could be one of those that just didn't work out, but I probably didn't pay much for it either because I am factoring in their listed condition. So if a book like this is like listed as a VG, then I typically would only pay like $1 or $2 to get it, and just it becomes kind of a back issue filler for me. There are lots of X-Men in this. This is X-Men 155. Gosh, it looks gorgeous. It probably just needs a little bit of a cleaning. But the other thing I've noticed too is if you look at the spine here, I can't see any ticks. Now, if I take it out of the bag, there could be some non-color breaking ticks, but just gorgeous. Like maybe something right in there, but that's actually the staple, so that's fine. This is what I was talking about in the intro. A lot of comics being moved fast, a lot of them being listed very quickly, don't have time to grade every single book, and I think that what you end up learning are the grading standards. We all talk about like the CGC, CBCS grading standards, what their process is, but what I find interesting is the places where you buy the books. And it doesn't matter, it could be an LCS, it could be somebody that it could be anywhere that you're buying comics from. You start to see what their grading criteria is. Mile High Comics, I've talked about this before. I think that they see certain defects and they automatically throw it into certain categories. And I believe that Infinity Comics does the same thing. I can tell from the spine that without even taking the book out and looking at it, that the back cover is going to be a little dirty. So I think that they just see that and go, they look at the front, look at the back, they see the dirt and just go, you know what, this is a VF, and they throw it in here. When actually it's probably a little bit better than a VF as is. And then with a clean and a press, it could even get up to either a VFNM or even in the near mint minus near mint category. So I'm happy to get these books too, just like that. More X-Men. This is X-Men 146 featuring Arcade and Murder World. I don't know why, but this cover always stuck with me when I was a kid. And again, you can kind of see right here a little bit of dirt or discoloring right here on the cover. And so it immediately just goes into that sort of fine to very fine range. This does have at least one color breaking tick there, but I would still classify this as high grade X-Men back issues. And another thing is, as much as I love X-Men, the X-Men books are always desirable. There are auctions that, I think people see, and they specifically, if they're alphabetized, go down to the bottom and look for U Uncanny X-Men, and if they're not there, they just move on from the entire auction. There's always some attraction or desirability with X-Men. I don't believe the X-Men being in the MCU would make these books even more popular than they've ever been. I don't believe that to be true. But the X-Men they're just always going to be on comic book collectors' radar. Not an X book, but one of the keys that I talked about that I'm trying to focus on. This is New Mutants 26. This is the first appearance of Legion. And if you are an X-Men fan, a Claremont fan, Legion is a very important character. Great Bill Sienkiewicz cover, a cover that scared me when I was young. It is miswrapped, but looks to be in great shape otherwise. Again, maybe some small handful of non-color breaking ticks, but for the most part, I would say has that potential to be in sort of like an 8.0 to 9.2 sort of range if I'm being conservative there. And for the price I paid, I'll take that all day long. Here we have Avengers 172, awesome George Perez cover featuring Hawkeye. Tough book to get in high grade because we've got the orange background. You can see as the light moves right into it, one giant color breaking tick right in there. Bang, you can't miss that. But looks pretty strong otherwise. And a lot of these Avengers books, X-Men, some of the titles now you're seeing that these are the titles I was focusing on. I will go in and get filler issues and just drop some minimal bids on them and hope to win them $2 here, $3 there. And so that's the case with a lot of these Avengers books. Here's Avengers 166. Got Count Nefaria on the cover. Great depiction of Thor here in the foreground. 35-cent cover from 1977. And this is probably one of those that where the grading that they perform, the condition they listed the item in is probably pretty accurate. Just first glance, first assessment, it's probably in that 7.0 range. Another Avengers book, Avengers 161. This one always creeped me out. Great George Perez cover, but all of the ants crawling over Scarlet Witch, that always bugged me there. Just feel bad. And also I feel bad for Mr. Perez, who had to draw all of those, unfortunately. Probably now in digital age, you just draw one and clone it 1,000 times, but still kind of a fun, interesting cover. And this one looks to be in pretty good shape. Hopefully it doesn't need a press. I got the staple on top issue happening again, but just so you can see the condition there, that looks pretty good. All right, bouncing around some more. We've got Wonder Woman 189. This one I can tell already has a stack increase, but I bought this because of the Adam Hughes cover art. I understand Rare Comics, and I understand I've got the foil edition of a fourth print from a book from 2013 that was some exclusive for some convention somewhere, and there's only 32 copies in existence, and I want to let you know I have one, and it should be worth millions of dollars. I get that whole mentality, but I still feel like you could throw that book up for auction any day of the week, and if people don't know about it, that book would sell for $1. You have to be the eternal salesperson to remind people and hype books, whereas a book like this, you don't have to do anything. It's a gorgeous Adam Hughes cover, and it's got a lot of things going for it. DC collector, Wonder Woman collector, Adam Hughes collector, good girl art, comics with a white background. There's lots of stuff here where you could actually market this to a lot of different collectors if you had some auction or some interest in looking through your back issue bins where you're like, yeah, this is amazing. Or I don't even know who Adam Hughes is, but now I'm a fan after seeing this cover. I sold this book a long time ago when I was first starting to consider selling my collection. And it was one of the books that I regretted selling because I let it go for just a couple of bucks. And I'm happy to have this back in my collection. It looks gorgeous. The art looks amazing. It does suffer from a bit of a stack increase. Hard to tell what there we go. Now you can kind of see it right there. So it would need a press, but just outstanding. And those are the books that I love to pick up all day long because it's about adding value to your collection, but it's really about adding books like this to your collection that really will most likely to be desired by comic book collectors forever, making it easier to move down the road if you were going to move on from your collection. All right, same sort of story here, so I won't go over it again, but we've got Wonder Woman 157. Adam Hughes did a really nice run of Wonder Woman covers. Not all of them are the best covers you've ever seen, but because it's Hughes and because it's Wonder Woman, they're always going to be collectible. Back to X-Men, we've got an issue from the Dark Phoenix saga. We've got X-Men 134. This is a book for some reason that I always have a hard time finding in high grade. This one always seems beat up, and it is miswrapped, but this John Byrne cover looks fantastic. We've got Phoenix here as the Black Queen with the Phoenix Force in the background, and just a wonderful, well put together spine here. So I typically see this book with just some number of color breaking ticks, but I feel like this one probably could use a little bit of humidity in a press, and we've got a really nice high grade candidate here. So X-Men 134, that's super great, super nice. I don't know if I really scrutinized the scan on that one and just kind of bid blindly, so I'm happy to get that one. Here's another one kind of from the same era. We've got X-Men 131. John Byrne, cover art, Terry Austin on inks. All of these great X-Men books written by Chris Claremont. This is from 1979. And this is hard to tell. This one has the color breaking ticks that I would have expected to see on 134, and here it is on 131. Some of that is the miswrapping of the back cover art coming across, and some of it is color breaking ticks. So that's where it could be a 7.0, could be an 8.0, somewhere in that range. Hopefully you're kind of getting an idea of the condition range target that I was looking for, probably somewhere in that 5.5 to 8.5 for all of these books, and then dropping my bids accordingly so that I'm not overpaying for that type of mid-grade to lower upper grade condition. Here's X-Men 123, more arcade murder world stuff happening here. Spine looks really strong on this one. A little bit of color breaking in the character box, but looks really nice otherwise. So again, probably has that like 8.0 to 8.5 potential. X-Men 114. Love this book. This is the first book where the Uncanny appears in the trade. It doesn't officially get sort of recategorized by all the systems as Uncanny X-Men. But love this one. John Byrne on cover art. We've got Phoenix here also on the cover. This one's a little beat up, not too terrible, but what I'm noticing is this is something along the top. You can see that sort of line that's going across the top there. This is one of those where I probably would consider, maybe in the 4.5 to 5.5 range. To me, that's kind of a giveaway once we start looking at condition. If there's damage to the top or the bottom, then I really start to say, okay, are we maxing at a 6.0? I have a number of books graded in a 5.5 that have that damage to the top of the book and rippling. That it's not like one finger bend, and if anything kind of goes across the top entirely, I have to drop it down there and really consider it being a mid-grade book, and I think that's what this will end up being. All right, starting to slip into some of the bigger books here. X-Men 107. This is the first appearance of the Starjammers. Not the most popular team in comic books lore, but significant for this era of X-Men. And prior to the Uncanny being added to the top of the trade, it was the all-new, all-different X-Men. So there are collectors that will seek out a run of the all-new, all-different X-Men, and this is included in that run. You can see the condition here. Not excellent, not great. A lot of spine ticks. Again, probably in the 6.0-ish range. For me, it's also miscut. What I mean is you could see at the top here, it's not a straight line. There's more art here in the background than there is over here. It's slight, but maybe not the most presentable copy. Also has a stacking crease. But again, it's just moving your budget and moving your bid range into the condition range to get it to match up. And still, even that, I think I was getting a deal. All right, more all new, all different X-Men. This is X-Men 106. This is from 1977. Not as beat up as 107, but has more of a significant stacking crease here that you can see right there, even through the bag. Spine looks okay. This one, Again, they're all kind of roughly in the same ballpark of that 6.0, 6.5, but we're talking about the early days of Claremont X-Men with a great cover by Dave Cockrum. Okay, moving back to the Avengers. This is Avengers 158. Nothing really huge in this one. This one gets a little bit of love because it's a Jack Kirby cover. It's from 1976. I like to pick this book up on the cheap. Just has the facial expressions of those great Silver Age Avengers books, like the way that Scarlet Witch is drawn there. Looks to be pretty good. Probably somewhere around a VF minus on this one. Continuing more Avengers back issues. This is Avengers 138. Again, probably around a 7.0 on this one. I realized too, Avengers starting with the letter A, all of the auctions are listed alphabetically. So what I probably did was I saw the Avengers books and I'm doing a lot of figuring and a lot of bid maxing and things like that. And then clearly didn't get outbid and ended up getting these for a few bucks each. And then I kind of have like auction prep fatigue, where maybe somewhere in the middle of the auction around letters L, M, and O, somewhere like maybe I go, I don't want to research some of these, and then I pick it back up on the X. So a lot of books that start with A and a lot of books that start with U or X, you can kind of see what's happening there. All right, moving back towards the tail end, we've got Star Wars starting with letter S. This is Star Wars 24. This book picked up a little bit of heat when the Obi-Wan Kenobi show came out last year. Carmen Infantino on cover art here. This one looks to be pretty good. I don't see really any damage to the spine itself. A little bit of corner wear up here, right in there above the price, but minimal. So, could be a 9.0 maybe, 9.0, 9.2. Not bad on that one. Another Star Wars book, Star Wars 16. And this is the first appearance of this specific bounty hunter that is a main character in the current Star Wars Bounty Hunters storyline. Great cover by Walt Simonson here. It is miswrapped. It definitely has some light creasing to the spine that would need to be pressed out. Even in the bag, you can kind of see the rippling here up the side. But again, no color breaks that I can see. So a good candidate for a humidity treatment along the spine with a press. And that one should be good to go. So happy about that one. Another Star Wars book, Star Wars 14. Infantino on cover art once again. This one has more color breaks here, so that's unfortunate. Probably not a candidate for a 9.0, but somewhere in like the 7.75 range on this one. Secret Wars 2, number 3. Always on the lookout for Secret Wars. Secret Wars 2. I also love Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm always buying the huge crossover events from the 80s. So if I can get them for a few bucks, I will. This one looks to be in decent shape. One or two minor color breaks, plus a little bit of a corner softening up there in the top, but not too bad. I didn't pay too much for that either. We've got Marvel Team Up number 50, Spider-Man with Doctor Strange. This one has a pretty bad stacking crease. The spine looks to be okay, though, so probably a good candidate for probably also needs a clean along the spine. But pretty cool book, issue number 50 of Marvel Team Up there. And then almost done. Batman, The Long Halloween. I kind of knew when I was bidding on this that I think it was listed around, a VF minus, something like that. And it definitely has a couple of gashes right here on the side. So this is tough. And this isn't a modern book necessarily, but we're moving away from the newspaper print style comics. These are the books that I would stay away from Infinity, where if you see a book from the modern age all the way to current releases as a VF, it's probably a VF, or it probably could even be worse. I bought this because I love The Long Halloween. So much of Batman's cinematic history is based off of The Long Halloween and some of the characters in here, and I'm just trying to put together a full run. And I didn't have this copy featuring the Riddler. Okay, I saved one book for last because it was the big book. There's some big books in here, I think. Those early X-Men, the all-new, all-different X-Men, New Mutants with Legion, not a super huge book. But for me, this is a large order with a lot of books that really fit in my wheelhouse of collecting. But along the same lines, and hopefully you picked up on some of the foreshadowing, there are a handful of X-Men keys/grails. The obvious one, X-Men 1, giant size X-Men number 1. And then where some of the bigger characters are introduced, X-Men 101, and so on. And I could go down the list. I would argue that one of the most significant books in X-Men history is this one. There are a lot of character second appearances in here, and it really starts the historic run of X-Men authored by Chris Claremont and a host of, I would say, like Hall of Fame artists. And this book is X-Men 94. I am extremely fortunate to be the proud owner of this book. I did have to settle for what I am looking at right now is probably around a very good condition. You can see the damage to the spine, plus it is creased, so there is some stacking right there that you could see that would have to be buffed out. And also you could see, I don't want to take it out of the bag and board here, but you can also see at the top there where we have the pages that it's probably also rolled slightly. So meaning that you've got the back pages that are kind of rolling themselves back towards the spine away from the edge. So this would need to have some love given to it and could be pressed out. I do feel like I'm probably looking at somewhere between a 3.0 and a 4.5 for this book. I love it. I think that colors look great. Aside if you can stay away from the spine, this is exactly the way that you would expect an X-Men 94 to look in terms of the colors, the art, the vibrance, the action. We've got the all new, all different X-Men for the first time in X-Men history, and love it. And this is the exact kind of book that I'm targeting every time I bid. I go through the Infinity Comics auction listing and I start to pull out and see if I can find some of those bigger keys that would be way more interesting to add to my collection than maybe some of those Avengers filler, although I love those too, and they may be good candidates for me to practice a press with before maybe I work on some of these other books. But this is the book. This is it right here, X-Men 94. This was the big reason why I participated in the Infinity Comics auction from a few weeks ago. I'm so happy to have it. I am a big collector of X-Men, and I think, like most folks, the big keys are typically missing. And if you are going to put a run together, there's some advice out there where you'd maybe want to start with the key, see if you can acquire that first, and then build around it. I actually do the opposite, mostly because of financial reasons. But in a case like this, where I have a number of X books in the 90s and a number of X books in the low hundreds, it was time. It was time to really splurge on this one, add X-Men 94. To me, again, if you're talking about the X-Men comic book history, this is up there. It's got to be in it. I would say at worst, it's in the top 10 of the most significant X books, where you've got that introduction of the new team in Giant Size X-Men #1. Yes, and that is right up there with X-Men #1. And I'm not disputing that in terms of its significance. But that team then comes back into this book in X-Men 94. And we are off and running with one of the most iconic and epic runs ever, and maybe will never be duplicated again. And this is that first issue in the series that started it all. Let me know what you think. How did I do with these books? Did I pick up some winners? Is there too much filler? Are you seeing more availability around key books like this? Do you see more of these books being put on sale more often these days than prior? I think that's also an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Are more people selling today than ever? I am happy to scoop these up as an active collector, an active buyer. And I think I got a number of books that also could be improved with a clean and press. So a lot of great stuff here. I can't wait to go through and grade these and add these to my collection and get them cataloged. And I just love it. So hopefully you loved it too. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.